I had this moment of seeing my mind outside of myself. So I don't know if you've seen the film Divergent, but
yes, I have.
There's a fear simulator, and it's when she goes into the game, she's like, this is not real. And then it changes. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And I had that moment in real time in my life because I was on the edge of a cliff. Okay. It was a massive bunch of negative thoughts in my head. And I literally heard.
And now today we have a lady that has ADHD and a few other things going on within her life that makes her quite a unique and strong personality. I don't know what she does for a business, but we're going to find out together. And already I'm smiling. We've had a few laughs, and her name is Stephanie Aycock. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Hurrah! But that was the first time I think I've got it on point. Steph, welcome.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to have you on. So we're just going to continue how we usually do on the podcast, and I'm going to ask you, how do you make your clients successful within your business? Tell us what you do, and then we'll go with the flow.
Awesome. Well, I help my clients access and see that negative voice inside their head as not them, and they get into their body and start living more authentically because they are no longer listening to the conditioned mind. I help artists, entrepreneurs, and small businesses. And I also am a speaker, a screenwriter, a producer that has a film in pre-production, and an actress.
Wow. Oh my days. So much is going on. We're going to have to decipher this one. This one is going to take a long time. Steph, I'm so glad that you've come on. So, right, when it comes to helping people, what does that exactly mean? Do you coach them from a point of view, just from a business point of view, or do you go beyond that? What does that entail?
I usually work with artists and performers who are really facing that self-doubt and are really ready to step into the next level. That I have currently someone who's auditioning for a lead on Broadway. So it's like they're stepping into that next level of their craft or their career, and that negative function and that voice just gets so loud and holds them back, and they get stuck. So we work through how to navigate that and have some major breakthroughs.
That's interesting. So how did you come about that, to be able to get high flying clients in a way that will seek out your help? What turned that into a situation that, yep, I want to do this for a living? Just tell us where that all started.
I think for me, I was immersed in the acting world. So I'm an actress, and I got to learn so many awesome techniques and skills. And then I had a whole bunch of trauma happen in my life as well. And I started to go down the personal development route. And I noticed that the exercises I was doing in acting was mirroring the exercises I was doing in personal development. The only difference was the context. So the context for the actor is to break you down so you play a character. But the context for personal development is to break you down so you get to your true self.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Did that make it easier to act out in a way, because you was an actor, to try to put yourself in someone else's place? Because
absolutely.
So just describe how that will come into play. So how does that work out?
So as an actor, one of the crafts parts of it is to, what is your character's thoughts, right? So like, what is your character thinking in this moment to make these behaviors and actions? And if you look at it from that perspective, you start to look at yourself as like you now as a character and be like, oh wait, what are the thoughts that are running and creating this version of myself? And so once you go in and look at the actual thought patterns of what's creating the version of you now, you can be like, oh, well, I don't want to be this version of me anymore because I'm ready to expand into something different.
Okay.
And you change the thought pattern and you change the thoughts around whatever beliefs you're trying to break through.
So acting out, a lot of people, when they have ADHD, they mask. And the reason why they mask is because they try to hide it. Because first of all, before they even know they're ADHD, they feel they're not right, for want for a better word. Something's not correct, for want of a better word. So they tend to act in a way. They try to be somebody else in a way. So how did that affect your ADHD from that point of view? If you can think way back, with hindsight now, because obviously you didn't know you had ADHD way back in the days, but if you think way back, how does that play into the situation of masking, of acting out when you had ADHD without knowing it? So what I'm trying to say is, what was the situation at the time and how did you feel at the time when you were different? What was different compared to everybody else?
For me, there's been this fundamental belief that there's something wrong with me. And so always overcompensating, overachieving, people pleasing, all of these personalities come up because you're trying to protect yourself from being found out.
Yep.
And it was when I started to get clear on there's nothing wrong with me. This is actually a superpower that just I didn't know how to use. That I then was able to see the behaviors that were the masks that aren't who I really am, and start to disarm and start one by one taking them down.
And how difficult was it for you in the past? So if you can go back as far as you can with hindsight, now you know what ADHD really looks like. How far did this really go? Were you toddling at the time, or was it older than that? What did people notice, and what did you notice at the time? Now you're a third party self looking in from the past.
Well, I also have I was also diagnosed manic depressive. So that has a whole other bag of worms, I guess, that it comes with in a way of my brain working. And so it was very much learning, one, that I do experience the world a little differently than some people. And also I get really, really high and inspired and energetic. But if thought patterns start to come up that are, I guess, distracting from my true self, then I fall into a depressive space. And so my attention then is very scattered and all over the place and more challenged. So for me, it's been learning how to navigate and deal with the different highs and lows, and trying to get that to be more centered, because then I'm able to be more grounded and present, which really helps with my ADHD.
Okay, so as you said, manic depressive. When did this first start, and what is a manic depressive? Not everybody knows the exact functions of that.
So I was diagnosed manic depressive when I was 14, which means I would have really high highs and really low lows, and be up and down a lot. And it's a completely different, I guess, feeling in the body even. So like in a manic space, it's like euphoria. It's like, I love living there. And then in a depressive space, it's very heavy and hard to do anything. So having to go from the extremes was very challenging. And also learning what was actually happening as well, of like being in alignment with who I really am versus being completely out of alignment with who I really am.
Okay, so these highs and lows, how early do these highs and lows start? So you were diagnosed when you was 14, is that correct?
Yes.
So when did these highs and lows? I mean, it's difficult enough when you're a teenager, right? You got highs and lows anyway when you're a teenager, and plus you're going through those changes. Difficult, but how far did this? When did it really start to trigger? Do you remember?
I think it started to trigger. I want to say 6th grade is when it really kind of started to happen, and then 7th grade was when I wrote a poem about feeling invisible in my school, and I won the contest.
Okay.
But
Wonderful.
I also won a lot of attention from from therapists and
Wow.
mental health professionals in the school because they were concerned.
Okay.
So a part of me is like, I've always been born, like I've just always been this way. And when you're a kid, it wasn't really, you weren't able to pinpoint it. But it wasn't until I got to be in middle school that it was affecting things.
I suppose so. It's a situation that it's all you knew, so you thought that was the norm, right? When you're so young, but when you go into higher school and then you have people to compare to, this isn't norm. This is not right. And then that's when it really kicked in. And I suppose that's when you became quite aware of it, and it probably exacerbated the situation.
Absolutely.
While having that awareness.
Absolutely. And it was more of the depressive state that I was in for a really long time. So it was less the inspiration and creative space. It was more the depressive space. And so it became a concern for a lot of people.
Okay. And how long can a depressive state actually last? Would it last just for literally a few days, or are we talking a week, or are we talking a month?
For me, when I was in that space, I would say like 2 months, 3 months.
My God.
But now it's like maybe 3 days. So the gap is much, much smaller.
So how did you cope being so young with a 3-month depressive state? I mean, what support was there, and how did you actually get through those times? Because that wasn't easy at all.
No, it wasn't easy. And it was a different time back then. I say back then like I'm ancient, but back in the 90s, it wasn't talked about as much as it is now.
Okay.
And so the tools and the resources were very different. So instead of all of the stuff they have now, I was just really over medicated.
Really?
Which was a really interesting experience.
Okay. So how did that go down with all the medication?
They just never found the cocktail that worked for me. There were several, I've gotten to be now as an adult, and I know there's really a way to find that special chemical balance through medication when you really need it. For me, they were never able to really get a cocktail that worked. And so the side effects of some of the meds just started to get really intense, and it was a wild ride.
I can imagine. So at the time you thought you had some kind of hope because of the medication, and you're going through your teenage years and with the depression for so long, and you're dealing with ADHD and everything else that goes around that age. That was a really, really difficult time. So how did that affect you coming out from that? How did it affect your relationships? How did it affect your your personal relationships when it comes to, because that's the stage where you're finding potential partners too, you're going through that stage, and how do you navigate that if you did?
Yeah, I actually didn't. So I didn't, I didn't have any, I didn't have any space really for learning how to be in relationship in that way. And I think with just in general, relationships were challenged. Just in general, relationships were challenging because you're so heavy, and you isolate. So I had like I had friends, but I never really had the depth of relationship that I do now because of all my tools that I've gotten to acquire.
So, as you said, you had friends. Did you have at least one person, one friend that you could deeply actually have that conversation with? Because you must have felt highly, highly isolated. But usually there's someone, be that a cousin, be that a friend, but someone that you get that support from. Was there not that situation at all for you?
Yeah, I had a few people, and they were more mentors than they were, I guess, peers. So one of my volleyball coaches was a huge part of that journey for me, and just being able to share what's going on. And I would say my best friend since I was like 7. She was able to, she knew what was up and what was happening in my world. So
you're still best friends to this day?
Yes, we're still best friends to this day.
That is amazing. So she's seen your highs and lows, literally from way back in the days up to now, where you've got some more composure because you've got used to what the situation is, how to manage yourself and whatever. So she's been a rock throughout your life.
Yes, and she has ADHD. So we kind of like talk about the things that we do because of our ADHD, and how to how to have systems in place so that we get some help when we need it.
That is amazing to have that kind of relationship. So, right. So you got to the stage where you left school. That was a really problematic situation. Not knowing how to navigate school and what was happening with the medication that wasn't working, etc. So now you're going into the next stage of your life. What happened when you left school? Did you go to college? Did you take a different stage, or what happened? So
I'm starting to in real time put pieces together since you're bringing them up, because I haven't really thought about it in a long time. But I went to quote unquote real school, real college for a semester. And I did great academically, but all of the other stuff was just I was not in a good place at the time still. And it wasn't until I left that school after a semester, and I went back home and did community college for a remaining semester, while also being like, I'm ready to move to New York. I'm going to go to New York. So I actually got into an acting conservatory, and I went to an acting school for the remainder of the years, and I graduated and continued to study after. And I think because of my ADHD and the way that I function in the world, that was the best place for me to be. It wasn't to be in like a sit down studious study place. It was a place to be in a creative, rehearsals, memorizing lines. That was a whole different journey. But just all of the things that I got to do in acting in that conservatory, I see now as such a gift, because I needed everything that I did at that time, and I didn't have to sit and be studious and really focus in the linear way.
So was it a situation that when you left school, you felt quite, how can I say, quite restricted, like you couldn't breathe? So the acting actually allowed you to just actually express yourself in so many different ways, because you could never do that before. You was restricted. So could that just do what the acting gave you? You found something to actually express yourself in a way that you could never do before, and that's why you started to take that undertaking.
Yes, I felt the most authentic and like real version of myself in those spaces. And I think that's because I was getting to play, I was getting to express every emotion you can imagine. I was just getting to be myself, really, and in a really safe space. So I think what you said is absolutely right.
So would you also think that now, looking at everything, that it would just allowed you to how can I say, a form of therapy, because you was acting out your past.
Oh, yes.
Really, you was, you was
100%.
yeah, you was acting out your past, and you was acting out your future, what you want to be. Would that be fair enough to say?
I think 100% that would be fair. I think I know the first 2 years of my acting training was really just me being able to be completely expressive with all of the stuff that I've gone through. And then after that, and I would say now, even in my, later years, acting is more, I'm able to access more imagination rather than my old stuff. So it frees me up even more. So if I'm just touching my old stuff, then there's certain limits and barriers that pop up because it's still scary or not safe to like go fully into that emotion or fully into that experience. Whereas if it's my imagination, then it's it's unlimited because there's safety within the imagination.
Yeah, and I suppose the reason why you've left that that past alone is because you've already acted it out. You've done your therapy,
yes,
and it's time to move on.
Exactly.
Right? You don't want to keep on reliving it. It was therapy at the time. It made you feel good, but at some point, it probably turned and felt bad because you had done enough of that, and then you thought, "No, I want to imagine. Right? I want to go forward." Or am I going in the wrong direction?
No, that's 100% correct. It was 2018 when I was in the middle of a show. I was playing the lead in a show. And in the middle of it, my heart just like turned off, and the character was very closely related to me, and all of our circumstances were very closely related to mine, if not a little more exaggerated.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. And I just, for the next 3 weeks, I performed, but it was like a stage mom forcing her kid to perform.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we'll take a step back. We'll just, obviously that was such a beautiful healing journey that you needed for however long I practiced, in the theater. And then I decided to just start working on set instead of as an actor, but as a crew. And I absolutely loved it. And I love it still. And then I wrote a screenplay, and we're in pre-production for a film. So I'm having more fun on the other end, while also knowing that when it comes back and it feels right, I'll jump back on stage.
Okay, so I suppose the reason why you're in a situation now that when you're depressed, you're only depressed for 3 days rather than almost 3 months, because you go through your therapy thing again. During the 3 days, you get it over and done with. You know how to get within your mind, done and dusted. And I suppose you're able to do it from that point of view. You're not really medicating, but you're either doing other things instead.
Yes. I actually have a system that I created called the mental system. And I try to make sure I do all of the, if not all of the actions, at least 5 of them. So MENTAL spells mental. And each letter is something I do every day, which is I meditate, I make my bed, I exercise, I express myself, I watch my nutrition, I go to nature, I have togetherness, so community, I ask for help, and I laugh.
That's beautiful. And the reason why I believed at the time you weren't medicating is because you're going through this mental exercise all the time when it comes to your acting, and you're going through that. So you're understanding how the mind can be, want for a better word, not tricked, but actually it could be molded in the way that you need it to be, in the state that you need to be, in a positive state. So you've come a long way from 3 months to 3 days. That's huge. And that's a great achievement, and hence how to help other people from a mental point of view, because you've had to go through those stages, those processes, to be able to know how to independently, with individual people, like a bespoke situation, to understand them and actually make changes from a bespoke. You don't use how can I say, like a framework. You don't use a framework. You know, you have a way of working with people, but you try to engage with people one-to-one. And then you know what works specifically for them.
Yes, it's more of a intuitive, one-on-one, individualized process, because everyone, it's just like a character, you know, everyone is so different.
That's right.
And because I did go and study acting and learn, you know, all about releasing the voice. There's emotion in the voice. There's emotion in the body. There's so much just within the instrument of the human being of learning how to play it that I've applied it to healing myself. And then now I go back and help others break through and heal as well.
So how do you think the ADHD now has helped you from a positive point of view?
I would say by understanding it, I understand myself better. And there are so many benefits to being ADHD. I mean, we're super creative. We're innovators. And it's just knowing how to put, like, I guess, systems in place so that your world functions well around you while you getting to be yourself.
That's wonderful. You've taken a wonderful journey. And I can't believe it, actually, because without even being trained on it, you haven't taken a qualification on it. You haven't gone to university or anything like that. And I'm surmising, right? I'm just guessing. Is that correct?
For personal development or for which one?
For actually the psychology side of things.
Oh, the psychology side of things. No, I haven't gotten any. I mean, I've gone to so many trainings, but I haven't done any like schooling, I guess. Everything's been really like hands-on, visceral, me experiencing it.
This lifestyle.
Yeah, versus sitting down and studying it.
And that's always the best way. I mean, it's one thing reading a book, it's another thing living it, right?
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
So when it comes to navigating your life, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? The worst part of your life before you started to come out the hole?
Oh, man. Before I came out of the hole, so the worst part of my life was 2002 to 2003. I was hospitalized when I think I was 15 at that time.
Okay.
Because my mind would just not stop. I was just constantly thinking about ending my life, and I could not stop thinking about it. So there was a lot of concern there. And then 6 months later, my dad actually did end his life. So
sorry to hear that.
That was the most challenging time. And then close to a decade later, I was in, once again, that situation of, this time it was me that was ready to be like gone. And I had a, I don't want to call it an attempt, because I feel like for it to be an attempt, I would have had to like have jumped off the cliff.
Yes.
But it was a contemplation once again. So I was on the edge of a cliff, and I had this moment of seeing my mind outside of myself. So I don't know if you've seen the film Divergent, but
yes, I have.
There's a fear simulator, and it's when she goes into the game, she's like, "This is not real," and then it changes. Right. Yeah. Yes. And I had that moment in real time in my life, because I was on the edge of a cliff.
Okay.
It was a massive bunch of negative thoughts in my head, and I literally heard, "This is not real," and I was able to take a breath, and I took a step back. And I saw my mind outside of it, and I just like watched everything kind of like, oh, wow, I don't have to listen to this. And I just took different action than what it was telling me to. And that was a pivotal moment for me. And actually, like, I think the basis for how I teach my clients and just tell people in general, and what my screenplay is all about, is that once I saw that voice as not me, my whole world changed. And that's how I live every single day now, is I get to really see, like, who's talking? Who is that? Who said that? You know, like who am I listening to in my head? Is it my true self, or is it this negative chatter?
Okay.
And that was really a pivotal moment that allowed me to, one, live, and then two, have that experience to help other people learn that they are not that voice in their head.
Okay, so with that said, what philosophy came out of that? So what mantra, what particular thing did you take from that holds fast within you, that you say to yourself every day?
Well, I actually chant.
Okay.
As my spiritual practice, I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
My God. So am I. I'm the same.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Nichiren Daishonin.
Wow.
You do not understand, listeners. We are Japanese Buddhists and we come from the same sect. I knew she was special.
Oh my
goodness.
That.
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yes. So I chant that, and it basically means that I am devoted to the mystic law of cause and effect through vibration and sound, which means everything is energy.
That's right.
Every single moment is a cause and an effect. And for me to chant, I tune myself to the highest intention, highest vibration, frequency, whatever you want to call it, love. And that is my mantra. So when I'm going through all of that, I just start, I am the Buddha. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and it, gets less and it dissipates. And it's really amazing when you activate your life force, which is what I believe that chanting does. And it also polishes your mirror.
Oh, yeah, okay. The famous mirror shenanigan. Yeah, I mean, it works for me. I mean, I'm on no medication or anything like that at all, but I just use the chanting, the meditation every morning, sometimes at night. I'm still not disciplined to do the night thing.
Me either. That's my goal.
So very similar again, but it is very powerful. So if it's a situation, even when I'm on the tube, if I'm going somewhere on the bus, and I will chant, I'll bring out my book, and it helps me root. That's one of the things that I will do, and I have no problems doing it. And people will watch me; they will go, "Oh, what's he doing?" But it works for me, it inspires others too. So
absolutely, and it's great for ADHD because you constantly see how your mind, when you're chanting, you constantly see how your mind is kind of going in opposite directions, and you just constantly bring yourself back. So what am I saying? How does it feel?
That's
know, and then it's a practice for grounding for sure.
And it's very musical too. And in ADHD, music can really help massively. But you can create your own tone, the right tone for you. So you don't even have to play music all the time. You can, listeners, what you can do is you can chant in a way that it resonates well with you. And to put you in a state that you need to be in. But anyway, we digressed. This is not the podcast from Nichiren Daishonin.
No. That's so wild, though, that we both do that we both chant. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And that we're not consistent at nighttime. That's very
yes, exactly. Yeah. That's not consistent at night.
Maybe that's a neurodivergent thing. I don't know.
It might be.
We'll have to look into that. So that's a great thing. So you had that outer body experience, that beautiful experience. And I say beautiful, yes, it was a difficult time for you, but that's the transformation. That's the time that actually turned your life and was positive for other people. And that's what I mean by beautiful experience. So you've taken that with you, and the chanting of, with the Buddhism, Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. And that's worked for you. And that's been that silver lining consistently within your life going on. So while taking on the acting and using that as therapy, you're now doing more the chanting and using the skill set to help other people. So you're in a much better place. So I'm really surprised. If you're chanting, it shouldn't be 3 days that you're depressed. It should be 3 hours. I'm really surprised.
It usually it's gotten down to 3 hours. I just ride the wave. I just ride the wave, and it dissipates. I think the longest one I've had in the past 4 years, like the longest depressive episode I've had in the past 4 years, was about 3 days. But that was just because life was really lifing. And I think that's amazing for 4 years of just only one episode of it.
That is amazing. From what, 2 to 3 months, one time, and now you're in a situation where it's now and again and very short amount of time. Okay, so that's really good that you've learned to accept the ADHD, because majority of people don't, including myself. I didn't, and then I had to accept that. And what did you notice once you accepted the ADHD? Did you see any changes within your life? What was the state of your life once you got to the stage of, okay, I've got ADHD, what's next?
I show up now differently for myself with knowing that I have ADHD, because the way I treat myself is different. So I don't beat myself up anymore over certain situations, like losing my keys all the time, or having a mess somewhere, you know. I'm really more gentle. I also feel like by accepting it, it allowed me to stop resisting it. Obviously, like resisting it, and what you resist persists. So when I stopped resisting what was, which was, I'm a scatterbrain sometimes, with other fun quirks that come along with that, I was able to kind of harness it in a way that was more beneficial than it would be detrimental. And also, it just gives me a lot of compassion for other people that are, kind of struggling and walking the world with it.
And I take it you can have that compassion because you had to struggle all that time and you didn't know where to navigate with it, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so with that turmoil that you had to go through for so long, then you learn, okay, it's not, and I suppose the compassion doesn't come in the form of you have compassion for people that are ADHD, autistic, etc., but you have compassion for people throughout the spectrum, because suffering is suffering regardless of where that suffering comes from. So by having to suffer yourself in a particular way, they do not have to suffer in that particular way. Suffering is enough for you to try to help them. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's 100% correct.
And when you decided to help other people, and then that action started to take effect and you was working with other people, how did you feel?
Oh, I mean, it's the best feeling to see the light bulb go off in someone's eyes. Like you were able to kind of like say something that lit something up in them, because I don't, I'm not the one that causes or creates the transformation. I just hold space and guide, whereas whoever I'm working with is the one that has that aha moment. And my film, it's taken me a really long time to get it to the point it's at, but the mission is so big because it is about helping other people. It's about helping people see, okay, this is what it's like to live with a mental health issue and have compassion for that. But it's also to be like, okay, let's crack the brain open and show you what the mind or the devilish function is saying to you, and realize that's not you. And that can go for anyone, because every single human has that self-doubt and that negative self-talk at some point in their time.
No, without a doubt, no one. And the great thing is we're all different, and we all should be different. That's how it should be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So, hence helping people in so many different ways is a thoroughbred of what you want to do, which is great. So when it comes to helping people within your business, how do you do that? Is that from a point of view of one-to-one? Do you help them within groups, or do you help that from a corporate point of view, which I doubt so with what you do, but I'm putting it out there. How do you help?
Currently one-to-one.
Okay.
And currently speaking. So I'm looking at the avenues of getting on stages in the corporate world because, like I said, everyone has that negative self-talk. So it's for the, executives as well as the artists, and executives can be artists. I'm mainly one-on-one right now.
Okay. You know what? I'm curious. I'm going to ask. If I'm curious about something, listeners, I just ask. Okay. Regarding the speaking side of it, how did you find it when all right, you was quite an isolated child. You was an isolated person. So when it came to speaking, that couldn't have been easy for you because you had to put yourself out there, like, for everyone to see you. And that's not easy for someone that used to isolate. How easy or difficult was it for you to attack that situation to be a speaker, having ADHD?
I think for me, there's a tug of war always happening, which is there's this part of me that's a performer that always wants to be on stage, that always wants to be seen. And then there's that other part of me that's like, don't look at me, hide, isolate. And I've been performing since I was 4. So that's always been something I've done. And it just kind of switched instead of me performing as characters on stages, it's now me speaking and sharing my story on stages. So the transition wasn't that hard, and it's always been my safe space of where I felt the most comfortable to be myself. And it's so for me, performing is like almost more safe than just being in the world sometimes.
Hold on, Steph. Let's look into that. I'm really quite surprised with that, because remember, you had been masking for a very long time. You had been acting for a very long time, having ADHD, right? So that was your comfortable space at the time, because remember, you didn't have to be yourself.
Right.
Now, I really want to analyze this. So you went from that to being yourself, and you was even more comfortable by being your true self. That couldn't have happened just instantly overnight, or could it?
Well, if you look at a lot of performers, like a lot of actors, and you look at their makeup and who they are as like not performing, a lot of them will say like, oh, I was shy, or oh, I was isolated, or I didn't feel comfortable until I was on stage or till I was acting. And that's, for me, it's because there's like, yes, there's a mask, quote unquote, that the audience sees, but you're not necessarily wearing a mask. You're actually more vulnerable and open and exposed, but you have the illusion of a mask. Whereas in the real world, you are wearing a mask. You are pretending. You aren't connected, and you're not totally vulnerable and open in yourself. But when you have the protection of the character, aka a mask that people are seeing, then you can be your full self underneath that.
Interesting.
Isn't that wild? At least that's my experience.
I'm telling you, that's quite unusual. I've never come across a person that actually have gone through that stage. But as you said, you've gone through, when you was younger, you've always gone through some acting experience.
Yes.
And obviously everybody's experience, and this is a great thing of being unique. And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because you flipped things on the head and I wasn't expecting that. And that's why I like having that conversation. You can only have that in a natural conversation, right?
Absolutely.
And that's absolutely wonderful. And I'm really glad we've had that conversation. Okay, so I can see how you help people effortlessly. And I say that generally, and I usually wouldn't, and I say effortlessly is because you are only helping people that you know naturally what to do. You had to live that in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy, and I wouldn't normally say that, it's very easy for you to help in such a way because it's become so natural. It's so part of your being that it's very easy for you to tune into people and actually help them from a bespoke point of view.
Yes.
Does that
that
make sense?
That makes total sense. And that is very true. And it's hard to like say, oh, I follow this formula or this structure or this, because
you don't.
I don't. It's totally intuitive.
That's
and
right.
It's based on my based on my life and my own experience and my own wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm working with someone, I just get intuitive hits on, this is what needs to be said, come out, be pulled out, whatever. And it's because I have done so much of my own work. And so you can only take your clients as deep as you've gone. If you've only touched a little bit of the surface, then you can only take your clients to a little bit of the surface, because you don't know how to hold the magnitude of what the depth actually is.
Well said. And I totally understand that. And it's so true. That comes down to experience and living the pain. And you've done. And the great thing you've just shown with your journey is that as much as you're successful in what you do, you still have your ups and you still have your down days, and you will continuously do so, because that's part of the growing that we do within life, the experience. And I always say this to the listeners, even though listeners, you're feeling negative and down and I can't do it because I'm ADHD or I'm having a really bad day and etc. You have to go through the turmoil of life to be well adjusted, to be confident, and you have to fail many times before you can actually become very successful. Just like a child, starts to walk, they fall many times before they can run, right? And that's life, whether you're studying, a partnership, a lover, or anything else in life. And that's part of it. So as much as life may be difficult for you now, listener, do you understand the reason why I do these podcasts? It shows people who are successful, but they are still living their form of turmoil, but also living their form of success. And it's all part of the journey. Steph, what do you think?
That it's so true. And I think by accepting, for me, it comes down to accepting that I do have those low days and I don't resist them. It's just part of the human experience. They shift really quickly. And it's also paying attention to, wait, what am I focusing on? Where is my attention? Because that usually tells me why I'm having a low day. Am I complaining and I'm begrudging my life? Am I, woe is me? Okay, those are things I can immediately shift. I can fall into gratitude and appreciation immediately. And then right then and there, my state changes.
Wow. Okay, so give us one thing you can give to the listeners that would help them. Just that one thing, that ultimate thing. You can't give them 3 or 5. Don't try, Steph. Just that one thing.
Oh man. The quote, "This is not real," and really seeing the mind as not you and being able to recognize that you can choose differently. So being the witness of your mind allows you to make different choices and not listening to it, because it's a lot of times it's just full of BS.
And how can a person do that? That's easier said than done. It's a powerful thing, but how can a person go about doing that?
So the first step I would say is, when those thoughts come, ask yourself, who told you this? Who told you this? And then after you do that, you feel into your body, you feel into your heart, you feel into a part of your body? Where do you feel a sensation? And then focus on that, because what that does is that puts you back in your body and gets you out of your head. And the first thing I would say is to say, where did that thought come from? And then just pause and actually like go look for if you can find an answer. And then also getting dropped into the body, and then deep breaths.
Wow. Well, thank you, Steph. Unfortunately, we have to put a line in the sand. I wish we didn't, but I've made it a rule. Try not to go beyond an hour. I have to be disciplined, and
yes,
I'm not known for my discipline, so it is a miracle. But how do people get in touch with you if they need your help?
If they need my help, they can go to thefilmbloom.com, and there is a tab at the top that says work with me. You can work with me as a speaker, a coach, or if you want to be a producer on the film. And then also on Instagram at The Journey of Bloom.
Wow. And as always, listeners, I'll have that information down below so you can copy and paste or click away to your heart's content. But as you can see, she is the lady for you. She's resonating as she has lived that life and that pain, and she has the intuitiveness side of her. It's not from a piece of paper or a framework or whatever. She'll know what needs to be done, as you can see from her backstory and how she has just answered those beautiful things that we've asked her. She's definitely the one for you if she is resonating with you. So, Stephanie, with that said, thank you for giving your precious time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I had fun.
No, I'm glad. But unfortunately, we've got to leave. And listeners, please subscribe, like, and all those other nice things. And then we will see you soon. In the meantime, sayonara.